Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has arrived in Austria. The bilateral talks have already happened, and both the leaders, Chancellor has Nehammer, who has already spoken about how the bilateral ties between India and Australia are going to be further increased by way of trade, by way of both countries becoming strategic partners, by way of artificial intelligence, cultural development, cultural cooperation, and many of those things on those lines. Let's start off our conversation. Joining me on the telecast is Sharad Kohli. And Sharad, let's try to understand how there has been an increase in the volume of trade from Austria to India and from India to Austria over the last years.
Good afternoon, Megha, first of all, and good afternoon to my fellow panelists and NewsX viewers, of course. I think we have about close to $3 billion of bilateral trade. Austria is a small country. I mean, I still remember, researching on Austria when it got independence in probably 1955. And not many people know that India was instrumental in breaking Austria away from the shackles of the Soviet Union at that time. There were some issues which India seemingly helped in resolving. And I think, so Austria owes that a little bit of obligation to India. I think it is in that backdrop we've now entered 75 years. In 2019, I think that was celebrated 70 years of friendship. And now I think this is the 75th year, or 75 years completed for that matter, for Indo-Austrian relations. Not a very noticeable trade figure, but considering that Austria is a very small country, you can probably cross the whole country. I've been to Vienna a couple of times. You can probably drive through the country and cross over to Belgium and other places, Germany or Belgium, probably in the same day. So $3 billion, but then I think Prime Minister Modi's visit is definitely going to boost this trade. And if you look at the items being traded between the two countries, it's a very wide range. It's not like with Russia where we had, most of our import was oil. That's not the story with Austria. So the scope is tremendous. And I think with what Austria was dependent on the Chinese imports, not that they are stopped. I must confess here that a lot of NATO nations, despite the sanctions being imposed on them, and I'm sure the honorable diplomat who's on the panel, and of course Ravinder being an international expert as well, they will vouch for it, that backdoor dealings with Russia are continuing, be it oil, so wherever they feel that, so it's been a sanction of convenience, I would say. Wherever they need something which they can't do without, they still knock the doors of Russia. But as far as China is concerned, I'm quite aware that most of the NATO nations have sort of confided that it is high time that we create alternate supply chain across the world, and India comes out in the forefront. So I do feel that the scope of the international trade being boosted from here to about, let's set small targets, about 6 to 8 billions to start with, and probably then moving to 15-20 billion range. But that's a far cry right now. But there is a tremendous scope there. And I'm sure Prime Minister's visit is going to encourage investment from Austria, because a lot of Austrian investors who were earlier putting their money in Russia and in China are now wary of these two places. So they are looking for alternate destinations. I think probably some of them might have been waiting for Prime Minister to be there, somebody to reassure them that, look, India is laying a red carpet for you. So, and that is Prime Minister Modi, whenever he visits, top of his agenda is laying red carpet, come and invest in India.
Okay.
You're not going to find that kind of market. So that is going to be definitely happening in the times to come. But all in all, a very welcome visit coming after a very long time, Megha.
Okay, all right. Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev, let's also take a look at the diplomatic impact that is going to this visit is going to have across the globe, keeping in mind that Austria is not a NATO nation, and parallelly there is a NATO summit that is taking place in Washington, D.C. today.
I raised a very important point. After being to Moscow, Vienna is a natural stop because Vienna is neutral in this particular conflict, more than any other European Union country, apart from Hungary. And Austro-Hungarians have had a compact dating back to many centuries. But here I would like to bring in something in addition to what Mr. Kohli has just said. After the Berlin Wall fell, and the politics of Central and Eastern Europe was rearranged, Austria came in very quickly to re-establish the links it had from Habsburg time, from Holy Roman Empire, from Austro-Hungarian Empire, which used to extend all the way to what is now Yugoslavia, Albania, uh, Eastern Europe, and Central Europe. So the best way to go to these countries and improve your ties is via Vienna.
Okay.
And that is something which I believe Prime Minister is trying to leverage. Yes, Austria is a small country among the smaller ones, but it has very extensive linkages, economic, banking, and export import with these huge swath of land, east and center of it. Secondly, India's negotiations for a comprehensive economic partnership agreement with European Union are at a very sensitive stage. They've been ongoing for good 20 years without being able to make much of a headway. And one of the reasons is the traditional goods makers which compete with India within European Union. Austria is one of them. It has a vibrant textile industry which feels threatened by ingress from Indian textile industry through an FTA. So I think Prime Minister's visit to that country would assuage the sense of Indian invasion, economic one after the Roman Empire's times when the Romans did not have enough gold to pay for Indian silk. The phobia has continued to linger on.
Okay.
I should also say that both sides have been guilty of not paying enough economic attention to each other. There are pockets of strength in Austria, particularly in railway sector, for example, in new technologies, etc., which are available. And I think Prime Minister would be tapping those possibilities as we speak by talking to the CEOs of many Austrian companies.
Okay.
Thank you, Mehaka.
Okay, all right. I also have with me Rubinder Sachdev, and the question arises is how do we contrast the last visit that was made by an Indian Prime Minister, that was Indira Gandhi 41 years ago, and the visit that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is currently in Vienna and meeting the Chancellor. And if you take a look back at in history, there were these, publications in Vienna, in Austria. There were caricatures of, there is this one caricature that I came across where Indira Gandhi is being addressed by another name, by the then Chancellor, and then in reciprocation, Indira then calls him by the name of the former Chancellor of Austria, just indicating that the two leaders were not well acquainted with each other, meeting for the first time. India was not on the world map. Indira Gandhi perhaps not as popular and well known as Prime Minister Narendra Modi today is.
Oh, there's a difference between, ground and the sky between India 40 years ago and India of today. Absolutely, yes. In those times, 41 odd years ago, Indira Gandhi, her personality, whatever it be, India was nowhere on the map for anyone. India was perceived to be and is also a poor country and vastly underdeveloped. So, well, that's water past the bridge. But now, yes, definitely, yes. When Prime Minister Modi is there, I think the Austrian government is also very, very much alert. It would not misspell or mispronounce his name, for example, I think now. And there is logical reason for it. But also at the same time, I find this choice of this visit to be extremely interesting and strategic,
Yes.
Right? Because going from Moscow to Austria, okay, one, you see, in any case, there are multiple invitations pending from different countries for the Prime Minister to visit. I think end of the day, it depends upon us which ones you want to take the call when. So that means when they were designing this trip to Moscow, maybe they thought it could have been a solo trip to Moscow, by the way, also, right? But then they thought to couple, club along a European country. Now, Austria, as I think our colleagues have mentioned, you mentioned, is not a NATO country. Okay, Austria has been, so to say, a neutral country. Austria also houses some very interesting United Nations, UN organizations, especially the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, right? Uh, and Austria also has, as again brought out by you and Sharadji and Ambassador Sachdev, Austria has deep, access and deep networks within Europe. The banking, the Rothschilds, were a family spread across Europe, and one branch of the Rothschilds was in Austria also. And many of them actually during the Second World War then went away to the US, okay, and carried along their networks there. So in a way, in a networked world of moneyed people, old money people kind of a thing, Austria is pretty well placed. That said, yes, I mean, India's heft is rising. We need performing partners. You see, we are performing. Okay, so therefore, we want partners who are performing so that both of us can together perform. I mean, 40 years ago, let's say when Indira Gandhi visited Vienna, let's say Austria was performing, doing whatever, but in the global perception, India was not performing. For them, therefore, it was no use to engage much. Fine, diplomacy aside, to engage with India because they could not figure out how they would also in turn, gain from India, right? Or where they could create synergies. But now the scenarios are totally different. I mean, across all sectors, be it renewable energy, engineering and precision engineering, and AI as is being talked about, and the various agendas which are out there right now. I think it's altogether a different ball game and altogether a different chapter to be written.
Okay. All right, Sharad, coming back to you, talking about all these avenues which can be explored by both the countries. There was a push that had been made in the speech of the Chancellor when he spoke about digitalization, and we spoke about infrastructure push that is growing at an exponential rate in India. And there are some takeaways that Austria will also have from the development that is taking place in India at this point of time. The fastest developing nation across the world right now and the fastest GDP rate at this point of time. India looking to be the third largest economy of the world. So besides the traditional trade that is happening, there are also the Prime Minister who's meeting the CEOs of conglomerates in Austria. And while the balance of trade is in favor of Austria currently, there can be a two-way equilibrium that can be found between both nations.
Absolutely, Megha. If you look at the kind of trade that is happening between India and Austria right now, on top of the list is electronics. There's a lot of back-end electronics being manufactured in India, assembled in India, which is being exported to Austria. I'll just take you through the main items which are happening. Then apparels. I think apparels, because especially from South India, if you go to Tirupur, you will find, if you visit the factories there, you will find a lot of Austrian buyers and buying houses hunting around Tirupur, and they've got manufacturing facilities in Tirupur. We should not forget that Austria's population is little less than 1 crore, I would say, which is probably half the population of Delhi for that matter. So it's as I said, the population is not very large. So to the extent to which the trade can grow is not unlimited. We should keep that in mind. We have to be realistic. But then there is, as I said earlier, there is a tremendous scope. Then we look at textiles. Now again, textiles, whether it is from Gujarat or it is from other places, that is also being sent. A lot of linen is going to Austria. Next in the list, Megha, is the footwear industry. Footwear, especially leather, that high quality leather, which Austrians and for that matter, the rest of Europe, they appreciate high quality leather, which is now being exported for India. This was not being done earlier. This was being done from China earlier. Okay. And an interesting item, Megha, which has come up for export is vehicles. You find some of the two-wheelers and some of the I would say, assembled four-wheelers, which are also being, not many people know that some vehicles are going from India as well. And some of the railway equipment is also being exported. So that is a very unique achievement for India. well, India was traditionally known as importer of these items, and we never thought that we'll be able to export. Then mechanical appliances, Mega, are also being sent to Austria. So, and we should not forget also, Austria is next to Germany, which is a master in mechanical appliances and machine tools.
Yeah.
But with India's gate opening for these, so I think the scope is tremendous. But because of the size of population, because of the size of the market of Austria, it may not be unlimited. But the scope, right? My own analysis and as an economist, Mega, is that we can easily stretch this trade from currently a little more than $3 billion to about $8 to $9 billion if Austria really, tries to explore that what India has to offer. And I'm sure Prime Minister visit is going to take care of that knowledge or communication gap.
Okay. All right. Coming back to you, Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev, and you've been, giving insight into the history of India and Austrian bilateral ties, and also the importance and the significance of the country, Austria, across the globe and in the West. And let's also try to understand that there has been statements that have been given by the leaders of the two states, whether it is about the Ukraine war or we talk about the Gaza conflict. And both leaders have refrained from taking sides. They have not favored one country over the other. And the singular message that comes across from this Vienna meeting is the leaders on a very diplomatic note talking about how war is not the answer for any of these conflicts, any of these problems that are being raised by both parties, whether in Ukraine and Russia, or we talk about Israel and the Palestinian war that is going on.
I think you are absolutely right. We know Indian position. India has been for the peace, an apostle of peace for ever since we got our independence. We never invaded any country, etc. What is less known in India is that Austria has suffered due to its involvement in the two world wars. First World War, it was actually precipitated by the Crown Prince of Austro-Hungarian Empire, was assassinated in Serbia, which was a colony of Austria those days. And one thing led to another till a whole world war was waging throughout Europe. Second World War, Austria was corralled into having a union with Nazi Germany and had to quietly suffer the same fate as Germans themselves had suffered.
Yes.
In the name of common German destiny. And they have not forgotten the ravages of war, first and second. The entire Habsburg Empire came into disrepute, had to be dissolved after the First World War. A republic was born in 1919, etc. So it has, and the second time the republic was born after Germany's defeat was also in late 40s. So Austrians have a keen sense of history and what devastation wars can bring. And therefore, it's only natural for the two sides to talk of peace, talk of reconciliation, talk of a conflict resolution, be it in Gaza or be it in Ukraine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ravinder, let's hear it from you as well. Now, the overall picture over here, it has been, like I said, no drastic statements that are coming from the White House over Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit, first in Moscow and then in Vienna. Yes, there have been statements of condemnation coming in from the Ukrainian president, but overall it seems like all is hunky-dory when it comes to bilateral ties between US and India, whether it is about the meeting that has taken place between Putin and Modi, and now the Australian Chancellor and the Indian Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Megha. Yeah, sure. You see, what's happening, as you often said, a new world order or a new world matrix. The key thing which is happening in this new world matrix, which is under construction, is that nations are having to learn to adjust with each other, slow by slow, right? And especially by nations, I mean, in a big picture sense of the West and India and the rest of the world, right? So the White House came out with a statement, yeah, yesterday only, saying that, yes, we think now that Prime Minister Modi is the best person to create and talk peace with Putin. Yeah, sure, it's a reality. Modi, Prime Minister, has good relations, and India has good relations with Russia, and India can definitely, suggest in a friendly manner to Putin something. But the point is, the peace that the West says that Modi should talk to Putin is the peace per the terms of the West. They have their own concept of what peace would mean in the Ukraine conflict, right? Now, and I don't know, I don't think, I mean, it's not that, okay, play a broker, but what they still want or they think or they expect from us is that, yeah, sure, we'll kind of talk about peace and reconciliation, or let's say a pause or a cessation to the war. But the terms and conditions that they want, the West, so far it seems, are their own terms and conditions. There's no factor as to what Russia would want or coming to a middle ground with Russia. So anyway, that aside, so the West definitely, and America, I mean, America in a sense, it says that we appreciate that India can do that. Now that is happening only because, this heavy-weightedness of India is happening only because India is taking firm steps. By this visit to Moscow, the first visit after taking office, that too not in the winter when it's normally due, but in the month of July itself, India has sent a clear-cut signal to the world that in our geopolitics, in our worldview, Russia is an integral, important partner.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the statement which has gone out, right?
Yeah,
So
and
now,
also, the kind of transformation that has happened, because at a time when India used to, perhaps 10 years ago, make overtures to Russia or talk about their long-standing bilateral ties, there would be concerns that would be raised by an America, by a United Kingdom. But that has completely changed now.
oh yes, certainly that has already changed. And you see, part of it is that we have been trying to, convey some common sense logic to the West also. A weak Russia in the lap of China is a danger to the West. When sometime in the future, 5 years down the line, they have a conflict over Taiwan, if Russia is completely partnered with China, would then Russia and China, would then Russia come not to the help or partner with China for this war against the West? Okay. And secondly, the stronger India becomes with a partner with Russia, the more again it serves the interest of the West, if they want to look at it that way, because the stronger India is, the more we can be a counter to China. So that is something I think that which we've been trying to convey to the West also. But, from their perspective, the world, they look, they need to change their glasses. Okay. And which they are now. I think they're going to the optometrist, getting a recheck and getting a new glass.
Okay, all right.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.